Heads up! How's this grab you?
When a series lasts as long as this one has, sometimes things start to get weird. We've seen giant mechs, supernatural beings, and even multiversal time travel. After all of that, where else is there to go? Oh yeah, outer space. The Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon breaks through the atmosphere in order to tell a compelling sci-fi fantasy story filled with deception and intrigue. It also continues to refine the Daybreak Saga's hybrid action turn-based combat system with battles that are more engaging than ever before. The cliffhanger ending could make for a rocky re-entry for some, but when the dust settles, Trails Beyond the Horizon manages to safely touch down as another enthralling RPG.
I ain't showing any mercy.
Picking up where Trails Through Daybreak 2 left off, Trails Beyond the Horizon sees the nation of Calvard attempt humanity's first manned spaceflight called Project Startaker. Like Trails into Reverie, the roughly 60 to 70 hour campaign is split between the perspectives of three characters. The Trails of Cold Steel Saga's protagonist, Reen Schwarzer, the lead of Trails in the Sky III, Kevin Graham, and Daybreak's mercenary hero, Van Arkride. It manages this balance well, but unsurprisingly, it does mean that this isn't a good starting point for new fans. You'll need to have played the previous two Daybreak games and be familiar with the Cold Steel Saga, Reverie, and the third entry in the Sky trilogy to really get everything that's going on. That said, this story is still good on its own merits. Reen's route is captivating as he uncovers the conspiracy surrounding Project Startaker. Kevin's storyline is just as enticing as he picks up the mantle of Heretic Hunter once again, learning more about who his assassination target is and how to come to grips with it.
There's no way any of this is just some big misunderstanding.
Surprisingly, Van's section starts out as the most boring of the three as he and his crew fight off a mysterious new masked faction called the Vestiges. Van's path is as long as the other two combined, and while that makes sense since Trails Beyond the Horizon is his story, the first half of his route takes too long to build up, making the faster pacing of the other tales much more exciting by comparison. However, the way their stories tie in with Van's towards the finale ultimately redeems it. Outside of combat, Trails Beyond the Horizon sticks quite close to the formula of Daybreak 2. For instance, the Marchen Garten roguelite dungeon returns in the form of the Grim Garten. You navigate it by playing a minigame, moving across the board and fighting monsters until you reach a forest boss. Only the first half of the dungeon is required for story purposes, with the second being entirely optional. But it's a shame that the Grim Garden isn't available to continue playing through after the credits roll like Marchen Garten was. That's a slight downgrade as Marchen Garten gave a satisfying post-game feeling to Daybreak 2.
Prepare!
Thankfully, Grim Garden still has the same worthwhile incentives to explore it periodically throughout the story. You can earn valuable skill points to level up your party's attacks, as well as unlock cosmetics and useful items. You'll even learn more about the backstories of certain characters, which was particularly interesting for some of the antagonists.
Though I find that bob-haired boy who goes around taunting everyone quite insufferable.
Optional activities like this have always been an important part of the Trails games, and deep side quests and fun bonding events make a return to Trails Beyond the Horizon as well. Not only do they reward you with rare items, they also provide a vast amount of insight into the world and the people who inhabit it. For example, it's fun to see Reen contact Van to ask if he could accept requests from the city bulletin on his behalf in order to experience the mercenary life. And there are plenty of nostalgic touches that showcase how expansive this series is. The LGC morality system from the first two Daybreak games makes a return too. Sometimes, when Reen, Van, and Kevin finish quests, they have the option to decide the outcome, which increases their affinity to either Law, Gray, or Chaos. In the first Daybreak game, your affinity determined which allies joined Van towards one of the later chapters. Disappointingly, like Daybreak 2, there's no such impact in Trails Beyond the Horizon. It was initially a standout feature that separated Van from the other Trails heroes, so it's disheartening to see the mechanic regress instead of evolve. At least the bonding events remain consistently delightful and charming, letting you hang out with other party members during major story beats. Not only do they offer fantastic character development, but they can also increase a character's parameters, such as their attacking stats or chance that they'll initiate a follow-up attack in battle. A particularly memorable bonding event involves Rufus, a character introduced all the way back in the first Cold Steel game, reflecting on how his life has changed in that time. It's a satisfying full circle moment for longtime fans. Like the previous Daybreak games, Trails Beyond the Horizon uses a hybrid turn-based real-time action combat system. Out in the field, you can wail on enemies in real time in order to stun them, and then transition to the turn-based battle system with an advantage. This was an imperfect but exciting system when it was first introduced, and further refinements here make the field battles feel more fleshed out. There are now ZOC abilities that let you temporarily stop time and get a few extra hits in, but the biggest game changer is the awakening mechanic. Van, Reen, and Kevin can power themselves up to dish out more damage before going into turn-based combat. These awakenings include Reen's Spirit Unification, Van's Grendel, and Kevin's Stigma, which are clever ways of marrying a story-based power-up and a previously turn-based exclusive mechanic into a real-time action one. Those iterations are great, but turn-based combat will always be where Trails thrives the most, and it's just as impressive as ever here. At the top of your screen sits a turn order timeline that you can plan around and manipulate. There are several bonus icons that will randomly align with either an ally or an enemy on the timeline, which can range from bursts of healing or bypassing the casting time for magic to let a character fire off a spell right away. It's important to pay attention to the timeline order, as these bonuses can change the flow of battle, which makes for a compelling combat puzzle once again. Turn-based combat isn't entirely unchanged though. If you activate a shard boost from your boost gauge to power up your next attack and then strike an enemy, you'll steal whatever bonus was aligned with it and transform it into a more powerful plus version, increasing the effectiveness of it for yourself. CL0 Arts bonus: not only will your next spell be cast immediately, but its power jumps up by 50%. This adds an extra layer of clever planning to an already well thought out battle system. Alternatively, you can still use skills that inflict delay on an enemy, pushing a bonus further down the timeline to hopefully land on an ally. In fact, delaying an enemy while under a shard boost will now also spawn a plus version of that same bonus on the timeline during the next turn. These minor yet impactful boons make the combat more strategic and engaging. They can mean the difference between victory and defeat, especially against the hardest enemies later on.
Sixfold Gales!
Positioning is also crucial to combat. Each skill has a certain attack pattern, and it's important to maneuver your characters so that they get the most out of each action. Skills also have secondary effects. For example, Reen's Sixfold Gale skill inflicts delay, but also gets a damage buff if the enemy is struck from behind. Even if Reen can't get behind an enemy, the skill is still useful as the delay effect can help push a timeline bonus away from it. Trails has always had these mechanics, but the consistent quality and improvements between the entries is impressive, and a big part of what makes this combat system unique.
Take flight! Arc Raven!
The biggest addition to Trails Beyond the Horizon's turn-based combat is the introduction of shard commands. These are basically upgraded versions of Brave Orders from Cold Steel 3, 4, and Reverie. By consuming portions of your boost gauge, you can apply party-wide effects that last for a limited amount of turns. They can drastically turn the tide of battle, with effects like reducing incoming damage down to 30% or decreasing casting time for spells. Shard commands are also more flexible than Brave Orders. In previous Trails games, bosses could enact their Brave Orders, called disorders, to overwrite your own, but you couldn't do the same thing back. You're now able to overwrite boss anti-shard commands with your own, but it'll consume an extra bar in your boost gauge on top of the normal cost. It's a smartly implemented trade-off that levels the playing field and feels fair.
Sorry, pal.
Additionally, using 2 bars of your boost gauge activates DOC and lets characters act twice in a row. In previous Daybreak games, you were incentivized to mainly conserve your boost gauge to fire off a character's S-crafts, so between shard commands and ZOC, as well as the new bonus stealing mechanics, you have exciting new choices for how to spend it. Finally, the customization options remain largely unchanged from the previous 2 Daybreak games. But that's not a bad thing, since it provides the same kind of fun as tinkering in a toy box and getting lost for hours while optimizing your party's full potential. Slotting elemental gems, called quartz, into one of 4 available lines for a variety of perks is still a clever system, and the polish it's received over the past 2 decades has made it one of the most flexible in any modern RPG. After its predecessor took a detour from advancing the Calvard saga in favor of a more interpersonal story, The Legend of Heroes: Trails Beyond the Horizon almost feels like an overcorrection as it weaves the plot-heavy stories of 3 different protagonists into a single adventure. However, splitting it into 3 distinct routes makes it all much easier to digest. While our main hero is overshadowed by the other protagonists early on, the story eventually finds a satisfying way to weave its paths together and ultimately sticks the landing. The new mechanics in both the turn-based and real-time combat are also welcome additions that continue to refine a battle system that was already a lot of fun. And while its cliffhanger ending will likely be divisive, Trails Beyond the Horizon has certainly built an exciting launchpad for what comes next.
Nice.
If you want to get caught up, you can check out our reviews of the Trails Through Daybreak games, or for a more recent RPG, our review of Octopath Traveler 0. And for everything else, keep it here on IGN.
You maniac!